Appreciate everyone joining today to learn a little bit more about our Smart Justice Spark Grant funding cycle. Just wanted to do some quick introductions at the top. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting you previously, my name is Ryan Erickson Kulas, and I'm the Director of Operations and Programs here at the Michelson 20mm Foundation. I've been with the foundation for almost 7 years now. It'll be 7 years next month, and kind of run the operations of our Spark Grant program. So really excited to connect with y'all today, and I'll throw it over to my colleague Miguel to introduce himself.
Thank you, Ryan. Buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. Miguel Leon, Senior Director of Programs and Strategic Initiatives here at Michelson 20mm Foundation. Thank you for your interest in our Spark Grant round. Excited to have you join us and excited to share more information. Yeah, happy Tuesday, everybody.
All right, so just a quick agenda for today. We'll kind of provide y'all with an introduction to our foundation. If you're not familiar with the work that we do, we will then provide you with an overview of our Spark Grant program. We'll review what our application process entails. We'll highlight some previous awardees, and then we will have some time at the end for Q&A. If you have questions throughout this presentation, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. And then we will either do our best to respond typing, or we'll be able to answer them towards the tail end of this conversation. So just a little bit about our organization. The Michelson 20mm Foundation is founded and funded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. Dr. Michelson was a surgeon who invented medical devices, patented those devices, and then made his fortune through that. He actually had a protracted lawsuit with a company called Medtronic over his patents, and ended up settling for over $1 billion. He has since devoted himself to philanthropy. In addition to the Michelson 20mm Foundation, Dr. Michelson also supports numerous other philanthropic causes, including a medical research foundation, as well as an animal welfare foundation. Michelson 20mm seeks to accelerate progress towards a more just world by investing in tech entrepreneurs, chain makers, and policy to catalyze scalable innovations in knowledge economy. We seek to activate humanity's full potential through equitable education and economic opportunities. And we do that through 5 of our programs. And I'm just going to briefly mention those programs so that folks can have a better sense of the other work that we do. And then I'll throw it to Miguel to talk a little bit about our smart justice work. So the first pillar of our work that I'll mention is the Michelson IP Institute. As I mentioned, Dr. Michelson made his fortune in inventing devices, patenting those devices, and he's very passionate about bringing IP education to the masses so that inventors, entrepreneurs, students can capitalize on their IP similar to how he did. The Michelson IP Institute has a suite of resources for educators, entrepreneurs from across the various backgrounds to be able to build up their IP knowledge, and all are freely accessible. Michelson Impact Ventures is an arm of our organization that does targeted investments in for-profit companies. Those companies are typically aligned with the mission of our organization or our sister organization, Michelson Found Animals, which is that animal welfare organization that I mentioned previously. And then 3 other areas of work that I'll quickly highlight within the 20mm umbrella. Our Open Educational Resources Initiative was actually how our foundation got its start. And that's looking at the high cost of textbooks and instructional materials and how they're impacting students progressing through higher education. About 10 plus years ago, Dr. Michelson saw a news article where students weren't graduating from a local college in Southern California simply because of the high cost of textbooks. And that's what prompted him to start this foundation. He invested his own money to provide a scholarship opportunity for those students, but realized it didn't address the heart of the issue. And so invested in a nonprofit called OpenStax with a grant to spread the use of freely licensed instructional materials, or OER. Back in 2020, the pandemic really highlighted how the digital divide was impacting Californians when everyone started working from home, learning from home, et cetera. And so for us, it was really an inflection point for our organization. And that's what launched our digital equity initiative. That work is focused on bridging the digital divide and making sure that folks have access to high-speed internet at home. And then the last thing I'll touch on before tossing it over to Miguel is our Student Basic Needs Program. So this focuses on barriers that students face when it comes to completing degrees, whether it be housing, access to food, or a variety of other basic needs that stop them from being successful. So we work with partners across the ecosystem to ensure that we're supporting best practices to allow students to be successful within higher education. Miguel, I'll let you talk a little bit about our Smart Justice program.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. And thanks again, everybody, for joining. So our Smart Justice Initiative is at the intersection of criminal justice reform and higher education, and we really try to leverage higher ed as that catalytic force for transforming the lives of individuals who have been impacted by the criminal legal system. We also, through our efforts, try to create that systemic change. That's one thing that you're going to hear a lot from both Ryan and myself today. We know that there's a lot of programs, initiatives, organizations doing amazing work locally, regionally, at very sort of on the ground within community levels. But we are hopefully partnering with folks that couple that with that systemic lens at scale. So you'll hear a lot about that today. But yeah, that's our Smart Justice Initiative. And really our Spark Grant program, I wanted to share a little bit of information about the program itself. I already started getting a little bit into it, trying to identify and partner with highly impactful initiatives that wouldn't be possible or wouldn't be coordinated if it wasn't for our sort of in time catalytic investment through Spark Grants. We've heard from a lot of our partners that traditional grant making from our colleagues in our philanthropic sector takes a while, takes a long time from application to decision to dollars in the door. And so for us, Spark Grants is literally that spark, that infusion of dollars, that quick infusion of dollars to help support awesome work going on throughout California. We started Spark Grants, I believe in 2018, 2019. Ryan will correct me if I'm wrong. But to do that, to meet the need of organizations that were sharing with us that quicker dollars were needed. And so we made that our mission. Thank you, Ryan, 2019. And so our commitment to you all is to make decisions on all applications within 6 weeks of our call for proposals closing. And there is a process to that we'll share in just a sec. But this specific funding cycle opens September 2nd and closes September 16th. Spark grants are available to US-based nonprofit organizations. We are focusing this round and most of our grant making, in fact, in California. We are a California funder. Your organization doesn't need to be based in California, but the work that you are conducting and the impact that you are having should impact California and California students, California folks that are impacted by the criminal legal system. Work that doesn't impact California will be ineligible for this opportunity. So please keep that in mind. And there are projects that have California as one of their sites of many throughout the nation, for example. We are open to taking a look at those efforts. But again, keep in mind California impact. Those scalable solutions that we started talking about earlier is really what we're looking for. Yes, you're doing amazing work locally. Yes, you're impacting the folks that are coming through your door, through your program, through your org. But how is it that we are taking that show on the road, so to speak, sharing those best practices, sharing the impact outside of your organization, outside of your region, outside of the county that you're working in, across nonprofit ecosystems, across higher ed systems, across carceral institutions. That systemic level change is really what will make your proposal a lot stronger. And one of the things that we do like to do is partner with our colleagues in the philanthropic sector and love public-private partnerships as well. So if your project is currently being funded by other foundations, or you've partnered with a county or a municipality, and just need sort of like that boost of dollars to get you to that next sort of inflection point of your work, open to partnering with those sorts of initiatives as well, and being part of the funding stream that you all have. Mentioned some of this available to US-based nonprofits. Again, that California focus, and big priority given to those scalable systemic solutions that have that statewide impact. A little bit about our evaluation framework. We'll share our focus areas that we developed in partnership with what we call our Spark community advisors in just a sec, but definitely dive into those and read through those and chat with your colleagues at your organization about those and see if there is a project or work that you are currently doing, to see if there is alignment there. I think that's one of the biggest ones. There is that baseline criteria that we've been mentioning about California focus. So we'll hop into that. So our grants are up to 25K. And it'll be sort of a project-based grant, so covering a specific self-contained milestone or focus, if that's scaling a project that you already have. We have funded pilot projects in the past, but again, with that lens towards scalability, towards that broader impact. I mentioned earlier inflection points, things that will help you scale your program again across those nonprofit ecosystems or higher ed institutions and systems across the state. Some examples of milestone restrictions: general operating expenses, rent, utilities, server costs, ongoing inventory, general working capital. Definitely not something that we would partner on in terms of grants. So keep that in mind. Our focus areas, huge thank you to our partners, our Spark community advisors. We'll share a little bit more info about them in a couple of slides. But one of the things that we love to do is listen to community. And in developing our Spark grant round, we convene experts, on the ground partners to share with us, like, what is it that you see the field needs currently? And so what is it that we should fund in our upcoming round? And these are the focus areas that our advisors recommended. So the first one being efforts that scale and increase higher education and workforce development pathways for incarcerated individuals pursuing firefighting careers. This has been a big focus for our Smart Justice initiative over the past couple of years, and we definitely want to surface more partners in this space, more programs and efforts that are looking to really have firefighting careers be that economic opportunity pathway, that workforce development pathway for systems impacted folks, both behind bars and those coming back into community. Efforts that facilitate employment in these careers for incarcerated firefighters. Particularly interested in efforts that fully certify these firefighters to pursue firefighting careers upon release. That's one gap that we've seen time and time again, where incarcerated firefighters will be on the front lines. They might get some certification, while they're behind bars, but when they come back into community, there's still sort of this requirement in certain programs or requirement in certain pathways to get additional certifications. So trying to sort of bridge that gap where if you're certified on the inside and you have that frontline expertise and experience, why isn't that sort of pathway already open to you? Policy advocacy work that supports incarcerated firefighters, definitely a top priority, and you'll see that throughout our focus areas. We have been leaning heavily into policy as one of the biggest levers to affecting change throughout our organization and throughout our initiatives. We like to see it as sort of our dual-pronged approach to affecting change. Programmatic work through Michelson 20mm Foundation. We actually do have a sister organization, the Michelson Center for Public Policy, that we partner with a ton on the policy front. Another focus area for this Smart Justice Spark Grant Round initiatives with innovative approaches to higher education and prison programming. This might be a little bit sort of broad. And one of the things that I would recommend is that if you have an idea for a project or you have a partnership that you've been heading over the past year plus and have questions or want to sort of share with us, like, hey, do you think this is a good project? Might it be a finalist for the Smart Justice Spark Grant Round? Feel free to reach out, and we can have that conversation around, whether or not we think it might sort of hold up to get to subsequent rounds during the Spark Grant Round. Always happy to chat with nonprofit orgs and really have that transparent conversation around resources and time. We know it takes a lot of time and effort to piece together LOIs and applications, and we just like to be upfront and say like, hey, yeah, this is a great project, or maybe not for this round. So open to having those chats. But yeah, so for this one, around innovative approaches to higher ed and prison programming, innovative efforts that address housing for individuals re-entering community. Here we heard from our advisors that specific underrepresented populations have emerged as sort of needing our support, including trans, queer populations, transfer pathways that help programming participants with associate's degrees to seamlessly enroll in programs offering bachelor degrees. That transfer gap has emerged, yes, through our advisors, but also through partners in community, through partners in the space saying that, maybe the 2-year pathway is a little bit clearer. How do we clear up the transfer over to the 4-year pathway, to the BA pathway? Efforts that expand HEP programming at the CSU and the UC, building on what I just mentioned around the 2 years seeming to be a little bit more structured and a little bit more defined. We've been trying to expand into the CSUs, into the UCs in terms of HEP programming. So efforts that partner with those higher ed systems, definitely want to take a look at those. And again, as we mentioned, policy advocacy efforts that facilitate the scaling of HEP programming across California higher education systems and carceral facilities. We've partnered with folks that are kicking off at new institutions and within new higher ed systems. So definitely we'll take a look at that on the policy advocacy front. Another focus area for this round, projects that help ensure the quality of education being provided in HEP programs. Efforts that promote or improve the consistency in data collection, for example, to better understand the impact and tell the story of HEP programs. Definitely heard this from our advisors, have heard this from partners in community as well. Let's make sure that the quality of programs being offered to folks is top notch. They deserve it. And it's our duty to make sure that everything from pedagogy to practice is at the highest level. So think about programs that promote, ensure, or evaluate race equity and accessing HEP programs. We've heard that there's a bit of an imbalance in terms of folks being able to access HEP programming with African American and Latino folks not having as much access as others. So definitely want to tap into that and see if folks are working on that through your projects, through your partnerships. Projects that improve training for HEP program educators. Mentioned pedagogy and practice just a second ago, making sure that the folks that are providing HEP programming have the tools necessary to be able to support this population. Again, making sure that education is top notch. Efforts focused on increasing higher ed retention and completion rates for individuals in prison and individuals being released from prison. We've heard a lot that folks start, sometimes stop for different reasons, sometimes beyond their control. So how is it that we, through our collective efforts, make sure that that continuity is ensured and we help get folks across the finish line in terms of them pursuing higher ed, both behind bars and for folks coming back into community. And again, policy advocacy work that helps ensure the quality of education being provided in HEP programs. You'll hear this time and time again. Policies that lever, policy advocacy is the one of the mechanisms that we're really leveraging to affect change. One more focus area, efforts that analyze the landscape of HEP programming in California to support the launching of a California HEP consortium, a group that will advance recommendations on best approaches in HEP/reentry programming and policy statewide. If you're in this space, you've heard folks throughout the country piece together consortia that are really sort of statewide collective efforts that coalesce the HEP community in said states towards a unified front, a unified voice, towards collective action on the advocacy front, policy advocacy front. We've hoped that we can replicate that in California. We are hoping to take that initial step and really look at what is out there. Do we even know how many HEP programs there are in our state? Can we do the work to conduct that landscape analysis and plant the seed for what will hopefully become a HEP consortium here in the Golden State? Again, something that we've heard at conferences, something that we've heard from partners, the need to create a platform, a forum for these programs to come together, share best practices, build community, build a unified front. And have been told that maybe it's too big of a bite in the Golden State, but have also heard from folks that it's extremely necessary and that folks would love to pursue this sort of effort. So yeah, included it as a focus area, and I'm excited about that one. Yeah. Is Ryan, right? Is this you?
Yep. Yeah, I'll hop
Awesome.
back in here. Thanks, Miguel.
Hmm.
So obviously, we ask folks to, select a focus area that their work would impact. You also have the ability to kind of denote within the LOI, whether or not there would be another focus area impacted as well. So maybe you think, oh, my project hits, two of these focus areas. Folks will often ask as well, oh, can I submit a couple of projects, one for a couple of different focus areas? In those circumstances, I always advise them to kind of reach out to us, shoot us an email, say, hey, I'm considering this or that, and maybe we can kind of point you in a direction. That way it's streamlining, your efforts and your work a little bit. Getting back to sort of some of the other areas that we evaluate. So obviously we are looking at the potential impact of a grant. How many folks are you going to impact? What is the likelihood for success? We also ask for how that impact is measured. So in our proposal, we actually ask folks to set forth, okay, how will you evaluate whether or not this project has been successful? So we look at those metrics as a way to figure out whether or not it's a project that would kind of fit within our wheelhouse. Obviously, we want to get a better sense of your organization, particularly if we're not familiar with you previously. So, who's on your team? What partners have you worked with in the space? What does your revenue streams look like? What grants have you been given in the past? If you haven't been given a grant, that's not necessarily a disqualifier, or anything along those lines. But if you have had grants that have worked within the smart justice space, we certainly want to hear about it. And then Miguel referenced this as well, but scalability. And maybe it is not necessarily scalability within the grant period of the project, but it is, scalability of an idea. Hey, this grant will fund a pilot project. This pilot project will prove out a concept, and then the hope is that once that concept is proved out, it can be replicated across the state. And maybe that pilot programming is documenting those best practices that they're having. And then they're able to share that across the state to help sort of facilitate that scale. So those are the types of things that we are interested in. I would say generally, we tend to shy away from proposals that would have an impact on, one individual campus or maybe one, part of a city or something like that. We're really looking for that like regional or hopefully statewide approach. So letters of inquiry, we try to make it pretty easy on y'all in terms of sort of the initial first step. We do ask for folks to submit a letter of inquiry by September 2nd, or excuse me, it opens September 2nd, and then by September 16th. So we'll have about a 2-week period to submit. And really, the heart of that letter of inquiry is a 500 words around sort of what your proposed project is. If you go to our Spark Grant website right now, you will actually see both a copy of the LOI as well as a copy of the full application. And we'll talk about this in a little bit when we get down to our process, but we ask folks to submit an LOI, we review that, and then within about a week or so, we'll get back to them with, yes, we are inviting you to a full application, or no, we're not moving you forward. But we do have both of those documents available for your reference. So if you wanted to take a look at them in advance of the round opening on the 2nd, you certainly can. We'll also share them as well as a recording of this deck in a email following the webinar, likely going out tomorrow. We utilize a grant management system called Submittable. So if you have utilized it in the past, great. If not, you'll need to create an account. Please make sure you're safe listing Submittable in your email client because we will be sending out communications via Submittable. And then here's the grant committee, our team who will be sort of reviewing proposals as they come in, making decisions to advance. So obviously, in addition to myself as well as Miguel, we have our CEO and COO, Myra Lumbera and Phil Kim. All of these folks have had, 6, 7+ years within our organization, some 10+, 13, 15+. So certainly a great lens to think through, what makes the most sense for us and how we might be able to impact the space. And then Miguel mentioned this earlier, but we do have our Spark community advisors who will also be helping in that review process. So Miguel, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about them.
Thank you, Ryan. As much as we can learn in this space and grow in this space, I think we'll never know as much, have as much wisdom as folks with lived experience or folks that do work on the ground day to day. And so one of the participatory philanthropy strategies that we've implemented through our Spark Grant program is our Spark Community Advisors, where we actually hear from practitioners, experts, folks with lived experience, and we ask them, what should we fund in terms of focus areas? And then can you make recommendations on the applications that actually come in? And we're blessed and honored to have a really solid group of partners for this Spark Grant round to really guide us through the round. Jessica Hicklin from Unlock Labs, Miguel Quesada from the Men Collaborative, Dr. Taffany Lim, now with UCLA, Dr. Julissa Muñiz at UCLA as well, and Azucena Ortiz from the Healing and Justice Center. folks that are maybe colleagues of yours in community and in the SJ space, and really excited to have them on this journey with us to make sure that the decisions that we're making are solid ones and most beneficial to those impacted by the criminal legal system and those trying to leverage higher education as that transformative pathway for their lives. So huge shout out to them. But yeah, as I mentioned, they helped us with focus areas and will help us also in the decision-making process. A little bit of information in terms of the eval process. Within 6 business days of you submitting your LOI, you'll be notified of whether or not the proposal is advancing. I mentioned earlier to feel free to reach out and schedule some time to chat about the project that you're potentially proposing. We try to make it easy on folks. We try to make the process as unburdensome as possible. Again, we know resources might be tight. We know time is tight and efforts like this take a long time. So let's chat about whether or not it makes sense for you to pursue an LOI with us. Organizations that advance will be asked to submit a full application. And then finalists will be reviewed by our advisors. And within 6 weeks of the closing date of the Spark Grant round, the grant committee decisions will be shared. So quick turnaround, quick timeline. Just the infographic on the rolling eval process. We'll receive your LOI. We'll either let you know that the partnership makes sense or not. If it doesn't, we'll let you know if you're moving forward. Then we'll ask you to submit a full application. And then we'll review your full application. Our SCAs and our committee will do that. And then we'll have a finalist call where we have any sort of last minute questions regarding your application, and then we'll come to final decisions. Wanted to give folks an example or a handful of examples of partnerships that we've forged previously to give you a sense of what we're looking for in terms of partners, scalability, the projects that align with our ethos and just our grant rounds in general. So Brian and I will share a couple of previous partners. FFRP. Big partner in the space where we support incarcerated firefighters. They provide career support to formerly incarcerated firefighters and currently incarcerated individuals who are interested in these careers. We actually helped support their expansion to the Bay Area. Again, an awesome organization doing great work for a population that we've been focusing on for a couple of years now that are hoping to scale, right? That lens of it's doing great locally. How is it that we maximize it and expand it beyond the local region, hopefully statewide? And in this case, 2 of the major regions in the state of California. Campaign for College Opportunity, big partner of ours as well. They helped us with some research, specifically the possibility report, which helped examine the barriers and resources current and formerly incarcerated students face across the 3 systems of higher education in California. Huge help here in really sort of providing that data and information necessary to create change at the higher ed systems in our state. Again, with that lens of we need to take a look at all of them, the UCs, the CSUs, the community colleges. What are the barriers? What are the things that help folks on their pathway at each of these systems? And having that be shared widely across the state as that sort of resource to identify those gaps and address those gaps. Huge shout out to them. UCI Lifted, we mentioned earlier the desire to partner with the CSUs and the UCs, the 2 systems that need to play a little bit of catch up with the California community colleges in terms of higher education and prison programming, right? So we supported a replicable demonstration project called UCI Lifted. to establish the first UC bachelor's degree granting program in a California state prison. So it was an innovative pathway to higher ed for justice involved students. Um, yeah, awesome work there. Impact Justice, shout out to them, prior grantee and great partner in the space. We helped them launch the California Justice Leaders program, which was the first of its kind AmeriCorps program, specifically designed for young adults who have been justice involved. Think about AmeriCorps, but specific to this population. That element really sort of took them across the finish line for us because it's an established, existing best practice that has gone to scale across the nation, but really with an emphasis with a population that we care about. And so we thought it a really good partnership for us. To date, it's benefited over 100 members across the state. And in fact, we followed that up, an initial grant up with a second grant to help them kick off an alumni network for the CJL program. So growing and scaling something that was awesome for a small group of folks to impact an even broader group of folks, not just at their org, but sort of across the state within their org. So additional grantee highlights, Ryan.
Yeah, I will take us home prior to the Q&A. And reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Oakland Undivided, this was a grant that was awarded out of our digital equity program, and that looked at documenting advertised internet speed race versus actual internet speed race. So doing speed tests, collecting data, which would then provide an opportunity for advocates to then have that data and say, hey, the telecom companies are saying we're getting internet this fast. But really, we've conducted this many tests and we're getting it at this rate. So really crucial in terms of providing folks on the ground with key information about how they can then be advocating from a policy perspective. Unite LA, another digital equity grant. Our dollars supported the launch of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, or excuse me, the LA Digital Equity Action League, LA Deal. And that was a consortium of organizations, advocates, community members who are focused on bridging the digital divide within the greater LA County. This was a great example of our dollars combining with other dollars to support the launch of a project. Obviously, we weren't the only dollars that went into LA Deal, but to see that regional impact. And then we've also seen other regions of the state say, hey, we want to have a group focused on our region as well. So being able to see kind of some of the best practices that LA Deal did and have them scale. U.S. Public Interest Research Group, or U.S. PIRG, is a grantee out of our Open Educational Resources Initiative. You'll see we've mentioned a couple of these, but this is a research report which highlights an issue that was impacting students when it came to automatic textbook billing. So this idea that students were being billed automatically for their instructional materials as opposed to having the opportunity to shop around, find a better deal, etc. This research has been cited in numerous pieces of state legislation, class action lawsuits, and so really has had a tremendous impact in the space, and particularly in driving policy forward. And then Cal State Long Beach. So we supported them with a grant to create a best practice model for family-friendly campuses when it comes to pregnant and parenting students. And there was a question in the Q&A a little bit earlier asking to sort of clarify how, a project at an individual campus can sort of be considered scalable. And I think that this is sort of a great example of it. So the idea is that they are documenting their best practices so that other institutions can then utilize them to do similar work. I think UCI Lifted that Miguel was talking about was another great example of that. And we've actually seen other UC schools launch programs because of the success that UCI Lifted had. So again, it's that sort of one institution creating a model that can be replicated. And obviously, those institutions are also actively sort of sharing that information. So, just a few last things I want to mention before we'll head into the Q&A. Folks will often ask, how many proposals do we receive? How many do we fund, et cetera, et cetera. I would say generally we receive anywhere from 45 to 55 proposals over the course of a grant cycle being open. We will generally advance about a quarter of those, so 25% or so, forward to a full application. And then we generally will end up with anywhere from 3 to 5 awardees sort of coming out of the cycle, just to kind of give you an idea of the funnel. But from there, I'll open it up to the Q&A. We do have some in here. So Miguel, I'll read these out. And I'm guessing most of them will be for you. Kenneth asks, does the foundation prioritize programs that combine lived experience leadership with evidence-based reentry models, such as court-approved anger management and peer support groups?
Thanks, Ryan. And short answer, Kenneth, is yes. Lived experience for us is a top priority. In fact, when we've chatted with our advisors and other partners in the space, when we talk about quality in programming for higher education in prison programs or reentry programs, that is one key component that everyone emphasizes. If folks doing that work have the lived experience, the outcomes, the program itself is a lot better, and folks within those programs are more successful. Our strategy around even including our SCAs for focus area development and application review really leans into that. Folks with lived experience, with on-the-ground experience in this space, guiding us and helping us make those decisions that'll impact folks. So, yeah.
Next question. I think the answer to this might be no, but I'll defer to you, Miguel. Is Michelson 20MM open to funding requests for workforce pathways outside of firefighting? I don't know if I saw anything on that on the focus areas, but I'll defer to you.
I think short answer no for this round. But if there's a particular intersection with any of the focus areas outside of like the firefighter specific one, let's chat about it. Because we are, as an organization, dipping our toes into the workforce development space and are doing some initial work there. So happy to hear about the effort that's being coordinated.
And again, best way to reach Miguel at 20mm.org. And certainly, I think open to providing some feedback around potential ideas as well as just opportunities that maybe aren't a fit for a grant cycle, but other things that make sense for conversation.
Always happy to chat.
Can you please explain how scalability might apply to efforts that are policy advocacy related? I think, because we see this across all of our programs, often what we see is changes in policy have a scaled impact within the organization or within a system or a state. So if there is policy advocacy being done at the state level to change something, that sort of trickles down to the entire state because that's going to be impacted. If there's a system, the CSU system changes a policy of theirs, that's going to be impacting their entire system. So again, there's that sort of scalability factor. Miguel, I don't know if there are other things that jump to mind for you for that question.
Yeah, I'll mention two examples in our basic needs portfolio, actually. Partnerships that we forged with SoCalCan and with Young Invincibles, both organizations deep in the policy advocacy space that actually helped coordinate education and awareness efforts slash campaigns where they trained fellows student fellows, I might add, at each of their organizations to educate decision makers at the higher education system level and at the elected official level with all the info needed to make good decisions around emergency student aid and around basic needs. When we go back to this sort of question around lived experience, who best to tell this story than students themselves, right? It was a policy advocacy effort that, yes, trained a cohort of folks and benefited a cohort of folks at their organization and students that they were working with, but they then scaled that by actually taking action and sharing knowledge and info and telling their stories with decision makers at all levels. So we appreciated that lens. We thought it important for folks in those positions to get this info and partnered up.
Question from David. I saw in a previous slide that funding will not be able to go to rent. Generally, we do restrict that, an organization paying rent or something like that. Would that be applicable if it was used to directly expand housing or to initiate an innovative housing for returning citizens in higher ed? Yeah, I'll defer to you on that one.
Sounds interesting, and I think it merits a conversation for sure. We shy away from direct support to beneficiaries of the grants that we make. So, food vouchers, housing vouchers, laptops to students, school supplies, that sort of thing. We shy away from just because, if 100 of those applications come in, then we're hard pressed to find the dollars to be able to support all of them. And we know that all of them are worthy of receiving dollars, but in terms of, our focus and where we're dedicating 20mm's dollars to is that sort of scalable impact. I would love to hear a little bit more detail around what you all are contemplating. So highly encourage you to set up some time for us to chat through your project.
Question from Chelsea. Would a program that helps justice-involved people attain a high school equivalency match the priorities or non-post-secondary education? I,
Go for
yeah,
it.
go ahead, Miguel. I was gonna say, I feel like maybe not, but I'll defer to you.
I'd probably lean in the direction of no, but if it's part of a comprehensive approach where they get their equivalency exam, but then hop into a higher education pathway and sort of the core of the work is that higher education component, something we might consider. But we would have that open and frank conversation with you if you set up some time and say like, okay, we heard a little bit more, probably not the best sort of project for this grant round. So yeah, happy to hear more. Just from what we have right now, leaning in the direction of no.
Tom asks, we run a program for students at a community college who are already out of incarceration. Some may have been out for a number of years. Would a project around this program be eligible? I would say yes, but
Yeah,
we probably would need a little bit more information about what you're thinking, Tom. But I would say yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've partnered with Rising Scholars, Project Rebound, Underground Scholars, all programs that sort of fit what you've described. And if it's new, innovative, or part of some existing effort, would happy to hear about it.
Another question, what if we have a program that increases equity and opportunities in the legal field, which in return assist system-involved youth? That might be a little outside our focus areas, but Miguel, I'll always defer to you on that.
Yeah, it seems outside of what we've determined the round to focus on. Um, Career pathways for the legal system, and then those folks then help incarcerated youth is what I'm hearing. Um, Probably not aligned with the focus areas that we've outlined. So I'd say no, but if you see some intersection with the focus areas, let us know. Let me know and we'll chat through it.
And then we did have a couple of people drop some questions in the chat, so I'm going to try to access those as well. If an applicant is proposing a pilot training program for foster youth that also delivers direct services to underserved communities, would you recommend emphasizing the workforce development milestone or the community service development more strongly in the application? Um, I might suggest you email Miguel. I don't know if that would fit within the focus areas that we outlined. It's hard to tell just based on the information that you shared. I think it's Rather. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Um, but yeah, I don't know, Miguel, if anything jumped out to you from that question.
Yeah, I think our workforce pathway for this round is really in the incarcerated firefighter realm, and then the rest are sort of quality of HEP programming, and not so much workforce pathways in other sort of spaces within criminal justice reform work. But again, if you see some intersection with one of the focus areas that we don't, reach out.
And then I think the last question that I see, and of course, we'll give folks an opportunity to throw one in. Maureen asks, may an organization apply for two grants addressing totally different issues? Certainly can. Again, what I would strongly encourage you to do is email Miguel and say, hey, here are the two things that we're proposing. Because I think Miguel might say, one of these is stronger than the other, or the committee would be more interested in this one. And so it kind of saves y'all some time in terms of, effort, energy, etc.
Yeah, and I'll just add that during these conversations, we try and help folks position their LOI in the strongest way possible, with no guarantees, of course. But we'll suggest focus or reframe in this way. Partnering with XYZ entity or organization might make it a little bit more stronger. And we'll also be open and transparent and say, you know what, probably not this round. We suggest that you save that time and effort and resources for your org and pursue other opportunities. All in the spirit of, just making it easier for you all to position your organizations and your programs best.
Yeah, Miguel and I have both spent numerous years on the ground nonprofit side of the work, so we certainly understand y'all have much better things to do than applying for grants, especially if they're not a good fit for you. So we want to just make sure that we're a resource to you all as much as we can be to make your lives easier. So. Well, that's it. No more questions that I'm seeing come through. So really appreciate everyone's time. This recording, the deck, all of that will be emailed out to folks who have registered. We look forward to seeing proposals come in starting on the 2nd. And as always, if you have questions, please reach out to Miguel.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate everything you do on a daily basis.
Have a great day, folks.